I talked about, doing smoking coke and crack and freebase with, but I didn't talk about being homeless and not having anywhere to go and being cold and hungry and no resources. And that was a part of my story too. So I just want you to know that it took me from, earning a good living to the streets. And that's where addiction takes us. And that's what I wanted to add.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond Risk and Back. I am your host, Aaron Huey. Thank you so much for joining this episode of Beyond Risk and Back. We are going to talk about 12 steps, but we're going to talk about 12 steps for girls and moms and women, and confront some of the things that the truths about what it is like in these rooms, what we're going to experience, because I think there's a lot of dogma and false ideas of what's going on in those 12 step rooms. Oh, it's a cult. Oh, you're just changing one addiction for another. Let's talk to an expert in the 12 steps about this. I have Leslie Levy with me, and I met Leslie through a few of acquaintances and found out that her sponsorship work and her work in the 12 step rooms is prolific. It's worldwide. She has sponsees from all over the world. I'm going to let her tell her story on her terms, as that's the promise we make to each other, is we're not here to say their stories, but actually here to create a space for the secrets and the sickness to finally die, and finally the truth to be told. And as Leslie will teach us, really lean into the shame that's going on. And I have a million questions for you, Leslie. So welcome to Beyond Risk and Back. I so appreciate having you here and being willing to talk about this stuff.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for bringing that 12th step to the people who are listening, who are watching their children struggle. And let's be honest, families, you might be going through the struggle yourself. And this is your episode to really confront and look in the mirror instead of just pointing our fingers, right? So Leslie, let's get started. How much are you willing to tell us about how you ended up doing the 12-step work?
I'm willing to tell you everything because I've been taught that you're only as sick as your secrets. And if I can help somebody with my story, that makes it all worthwhile. And the truth is the truth. I mean, let's face it.
So how did you end up in the rooms?
Okay, so I come from a family of two parents who were both alcoholics, as they would say, functioning alcoholics, which I don't believe those two words should be in the same sentence, but whatever. My dad was, upper middle class, and he was a very heavy drinker, but well liked by everybody. Just a real warm, loving guy, and they were never home. They were in Mexico. He had restaurants in Mexico. I grew up in San Diego, and they were never home. They were never with their kids. They were always out opening another restaurant or going to a party or whatever. And so basically my twin sister and I raised ourselves, and we were home alone a lot. And, I grew up watching a lot of drinking going on, and I guess I just took that same path at a very young age. I remember smoking my first joint when I was 9 years old with my older brother. I was doing cocaine by the age of 14, and I was drinking a lot by the age of 18. So I was right out of the chute. I was fast and heavy with this disease. And as it progressed, it got worse as the years went by. It is a progressive disease. It never gets better. It always gets worse. And I tried everything for a long time. I tried to drink just on weekends. I tried to use only, on special occasions. And I just couldn't keep it together. By the time I was 25, my life was totally unmanageable.
There are a few things that you've already brought up that I think scare people away from approaching the 12-step rooms as a method of recovery. However, what I want to say before I ask you to define what 12-steppers mean when they say disease, because that's one of the ones that people quote unquote take issue with, and they start holding the rooms at arm's length. But I want to say this, and this is something that is so well documented and so often ignored. Of all the treatments for addiction, the single most effective and powerful treatment for addiction or alcoholism is the 12-step program. It has the highest results of all known treatments, and it's free. As parents and teachers and clinicians are all looking to provide support to people, we gloss over that one because there are words. And we'll address some of one, but the first one I want to address is disease. What does this mean, disease? When you say addiction is a disease, what do you mean by that? And why do people take issue with that? Because it sounds like when you say it's a disease, you're also saying it's not my fault. When people on the outside are saying, just stop. It's your fault because you keep doing it. What do you mean by disease? What does NA and AA mean by disease?
So I can only speak my own experience. So I believe it's a generational. It's three things. It's consumption coupled with environment, coupled with genetics. And it's often passed down and it becomes a family disease wherein that everybody in the family gets sick. That's why, the non-drinker goes to Al-Anon and the addict goes to AA or NA or one of those. But disease to me means dis-ease. I'm at dis-ease because all the things that were happening to me generationally and in my immediate family caused a lot of trauma and somewhat of a soul sickness, if you will. And that's the meaning for me of disease. And I need to find something in my life to heal that dis-ease and that soul sickness. And it really is an illness. It's a malady. It's a spiritual malady. That's the way, and when I understood that and I could start incorporating some of those steps into my life, because I was so ashamed of who I was and what was happening to me. And that's what I lived with, was shame. And because, my parents were alcoholics, so they were basically not home. They weren't parenting me. A lot of things happened to me along the way that caused even more disease and more shame and this is what happens. And whether you have, parents that parent you or parents that don't parent you, if you're an addict or an alcoholic, you go out, whether it's in your own home or outside your home, and you find other people who are addicts and alcoholics, and you're in a very unhealthy environment, and it causes more of the dis-ease. It's like a snowball effect. And I just, it's a pain. You cannot get better on your own. That's my experience.
I remember talking to parents often through the years of running a treatment program that they would say, we're thinking of moving schools. We're thinking of moving towns. We're thinking of, they were making massive changes while their children were in treatment so that the children didn't come home to the old environment, right? The strawberry patch. We find out we're allergic to strawberries, so everybody needs to stay out of the strawberry patch. So they would move. And every single time a parent brought that up to me to say, what do you think? I would say, I went to a family reunion in Florida, a place I had never been before. It took me 10 minutes to find drugs. 10 minutes. In a neighborhood I had never been on, 10 minutes. My radar for drugs was just boop, 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 bing, bing, bing. And I walked up and I said, you hold? And he said, yeah, how much you need? It was that easy, 10 minutes. So when we talk about constant putting ourselves in an environment that is unhealthy, I mean, Leslie, this is where things happen. If I'm drunk and I go into a place where people who are predators and addicts are drunk, something's going to happen to me. And it has. And that's the shame you're talking about. Yes?
Yes. And for me, I moved from San Diego to Whitefish, Montana. I mean, I'm not going to be able to find cocaine in Whitefish, Montana. I found it the first night I was there at the Palace Bar. Okay. One street down, the Palace Bar, I found it. And that was back in 1986.
So does it follow us? Are we talking about something that follows, or are we talking about something that really is everywhere? Is everyone doing it?
No, I don't believe that. I believe that it's an inside job, and that, like you said, I have a drug radar. I can't remember how you said that, but I believe that I have that. Addicts will find it. They will find it no matter what. You can't keep us away from the drug and the drink. And so the healing it's an inside job. We heal from the inside out. And once we start to work the steps and build a relationship with a higher power and get a sponsor and slowly become honest. I mean, it's been such a slow road for me to stop being dishonest, because my dishonesty was a protection. It was a protection from because I was so afraid of what you would think of me. The shame was huge, and the guilt and the sense of unworthiness that I had because of what happened to me. And my twin sister, she didn't make it. She killed herself when we were 34, and my brother died at 48 from this disease. And so I have a long history of family, and I can see it so clearly now because I'm treated. And I get treated every day, by the way. I get up and I take my medicine, hypothetically. I get up and I do my morning readings and my prayer and my meditation, and I call my sponsor, and I work with other alcoholics, and somehow in that formula, and that before I go to bed at night, I do an inventory of the day. And somehow with all of those, it's like a curriculum for me. And with all of that combined together, it equals healing. And it doesn't really make any sense to me, but that's kind of the spirituality of it. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You don't, sometimes you don't feel like it's working, but, decades later, you're sober.
Let's talk about the daily work and the concept of God. Because there again, that's one of the things that suddenly people start to stiff arm the 12-step rooms because of the higher power concept. Now, between you and me and all the listeners, when you talk about the daily medicine, I have said on this show, I think about using every single day. I'm 25 years clean, and I think about drugs every single day. And a lot of people's like, well, maybe you should get some therapy. It's like, I do my therapeutic work every single day. This show is part of my curriculum. This is part of my medicine, to talk to people like you and experts in brain chemistry and addiction and trauma. And because all of those, the teacher learns twice. That's what I can say about my curriculum, right? And the spiritual aspect of it, the spiritual understanding of what it means to be responsible to and in gratitude of a power greater than myself. Is that God? Is that all that is? You have to believe in God to go to the 12 steps?
Well, you said something. You said you think about using every day. But the fact is, and this part we don't see often, you're not. Okay. You haven't for 25 years. That's a bloody miracle right there. So there's days that I will walk by a restaurant and somebody will be having a glass of wine, and I'll be like, oh my God, I want one of those. But I end up just walking right by. So I'm protected. I'm fully protected all the way around, above and below, on both sides, just wrapped around me. It's because I've developed a relationship with God. I didn't come in here with a relationship with God. I didn't say I'm going to set out to, be a Bible thumper. I didn't do any of that, or a big book thumper. I just said I'm going to start from square one with my sponsor. And I got on my knees because it's a sign of humility. And I started to listen to other people and follow directions, because the hardest thing for an addict and an alcoholic to do is follow directions. And then my sponsor would say things like, don't get too well too quick, because that's my my nature is to get too well too quick, and then the arrogance comes in, and before you know it, I've got a bag of whatever in my hand and a bottle of whatever, and so she taught me how to get a little more humble, and it's a long, slow process, but it does work. You got to work it.
At brabapp.com, I have posted a parenting masterclass. The content is everything I have ever taught a parent in the past 20 years of working with parents in crisis. But here's the deal. It's $99. I want every parent to be able to have access to this course. So please go to brabapp.com, B-R-A-B for Beyond Risk and Back. brabapp.com, brabapp.com. Check it out for yourself. Is it the Christian God? Is it the Jewish God? Is it the pagan God? Like, which God do I have to succumb to honor, to give this power back to belong to this system of recovery?
Well, Aaron, you have to find the God for you that sits right in your heart. Okay. I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I had to work on it and develop a relationship. I mean, I read the Course in Miracles for 16 years. I read the Holy Spirit's interpretation for 15 years after that. And now I'm reading the Bible. I've just gone from one thing to another, and I'm sober. And so I don't know. I'm trying to find for me what works for me. I've done a lot of different, and the amazing thing, and now I'm reading about extraterrestrials, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think it's fascinating that my brain is even working. Okay. I'm just so grateful because I was an IV drug user. I was a crack. I'll take that back. I was in the days of Richard Pryor when freebase was happening. I was freebasing with NFL football players, going to Tower Records in the back of their limo, smoking cocaine, and my twin sister died. Okay. So, I mean, I don't mean to say that to be arrogant that I was hanging out with NFL football players. This disease doesn't care who the fuck you are. It doesn't care. Its main job is to chew you up, spit you out, and torture you until it kills you, and then devastate your whole family.
Do you accept or give credence to when someone says, my God is this 12-step room? This is a power greater than me, and I'll accept this room as my higher power.
Well, every person in that room has given me a piece of who my God is today, because they speak it. They speak it with their mouths. They say it in every meeting. They tell their experience, their strength, and their hope. And then God works through people.
That's the part right there. I mean, when I came into the room, see, I'd been a minister for 3 years and using daily and betraying my own covenants to the God that I had professed a faith in. But in a 24-hour time frame, I saw the face of God, and it wasn't, one was a divine face. One was my dad, the man who had raised me. And the other was a stranger at the Triangle Club, who to this day I don't know, who was the first call I made and just said, I love you. And I was yelling at him, don't say it. Don't fucking say that. And he goes, it's okay. I love you. And it's going to be okay. We'll come get you if you need a ride. I was like, I'm not ready for this. He was like, we have a meeting every hour. If you need a ride, call us. And he hung up. And that was it. Like that, it tumbled. And to me, when we talk about God, that moment was a God moment. The fact that my truck died the next morning and I walked to the gas station right after getting high and then heard the thundering voice of a divine consciousness saying, I love you. I forgive you. You are loved, lovable, and loving. Throw it away right now and never look back. And I did. And the voice and the sound went away. And then it was my dad when I told him the next day, I'm not going to a work meeting. I'm going to a 12-step meeting. I think I'm an addict. And he said, whatever you need, I'll do because I love you. And it was love, 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 love. That was God for me in that moment. I told you what happened the first time I went in. I almost got into a fight, and the man who would have kicked my ass became my sponsor. That was love. You brought up something that I want to jump into because you said, you go from one thing to another, whether it's cocaine in the back of a limo to drinking in a bar to Boise, Idaho, and finding it in a cornfield in a bag, because lo and behold, right, you can find it anywhere the moment you don't need it, the moment you shouldn't do it, it shows up. Isn't the 12-step room just another addiction? We start and they tell us, and we are told, do 90 meetings in 90 days. Get connected to this community. Say the words, chant the mantras, do the steps, do the steps, do the steps. Get a sponsor, do the steps with the sponsor. Isn't this just getting me addicted to people and this group instead of me just taking my life back?
I hope so. Because my sponsor told me to call her every day for the first, I bet I called her every day for the first year, honestly. And I just thought, and then she told me to do all these things and leave that man alone and all these things and leave that man alone. She probably said that 200 times to me. And, but I thought, she's so aggressive. Like, what's wrong with her? And then I thought, the thought came to me, which was God, because I was doing a little bit of work. The thought came to me, she's so aggressive. And I'm like, sitting in a crack house on the street level wasn't aggressive. It's like, I'm hardwired to be an addict. So I need to create new neural pathways. I need new neurons that fire together, wire together. I need new thought processes. I need new people. I need to fill my brain with love, like you said, and God, and my heart needs to soften. And my heart was so hardened. And I need to reprogram, everything. My emotional system, my brain that is the computer, and my heart, and my psychology, everything. I need to reprogram. And in the more meetings I went to. And the other thing I'll say is I needed to learn how to stick with the women, because there's, AA is not a hotbed of mental health. Okay. I mean, there's some people in AA that are still very sick. And so this last time I was on the bones of my ass, and I broke up a 21-year marriage, and I lost my kids and my grandkids and everything. And I basically lost my dignity is what I lost, and every bit of shred of self-respect. And I just said, I just can't, I don't not have another recovery in me. There's no way. I probably have another drunk in me, but this is all very cliche. People hear this in the rooms all the time, but I absolutely do not have another recovery. And so I started to listen to, and I stuck with the women, and I stuck with the women who had time and had solid, good sobriety. And that would be my recommendation for anybody that's going into it. Any woman, girl, an Alateen, Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever, is to stick with the women and stick with the women who are solid, the winners. They say stick with the winners. I'm saying it's the truth. Like, you need to. And if you don't, there's 4 things the alcoholic and addict goes to. Burns Brady, who's a circuit speaker, he's an addictions doctor. He says, caffeine, sugar. Well, first one's sex, men, that's what we go to after we sober up. And then caffeine and sugar. And there's one other one. I can't remember what it was, but
nicotine.
Yeah. I mean, I just know nicotine.
Yeah. I mean, because you see that, right? You come up to the room where everybody's getting sober and they're standing outside with a Monster or a coffee in their hand, smoking a cigarette, and there's a half-eaten stale cookie or donut in their other hand. And you're like, these are the healthy people? But they...
It's a process of elimination.
So let's talk about this process of elimination. Let's transition to, as a woman, you're saying stick with the women. We got moms who are listening saying, so should I go put my daughter in the room? Having girls, adolescents, teenagers, not adults. We did a lot of 12-step work, especially in the early days as a sober home. I would take the boys when we were a boys-only home daily. to meetings. When we became a co-ed facility, we would go to meetings that were run by an adult recovery unit. And the girls always seemed to be a target. Then it was later in my years of recovery, much, much later in the years of my recovery, that I had first heard the term the 13th step. The reason why I'm bringing this up, Leslie, is because obviously I want moms to look at the 12-step programs for themselves and their daughters. And I want them to look with eyes wide open. It is the number one most effective treatment on the planet for addiction, a drug or alcohol addiction. This includes cocaine. This includes sexual acting out behaviors. This even now includes self-harm. AANASAMA, all of it. It's the best and it's free. And it's a work in progress. And there are people in there who are in work in progress. So please talk about the 13th step. I want them to hear it from you. And I want them to hear about how to navigate this themselves and with their daughters, especially if their daughters are minors.
Yeah, so I just think I will go back to what I said before, is just stick closely with the women. And if you're, to be serious about your program, because you will encounter just like you do out in town, on the streets, wherever. If you're an addict, my propensity, I should talk about myself here, is to gravitate towards unhealthy behavior, whether it's sexual or consumption, cutting, psychological disassociation, all these things. I have a propensity to do all of those. So I had to work really hard to build relationships with women because I wasn't comfortable around women. And so that's what I suggest, is that I always tell my sponsees to, stick with the women. And inevitably, it's not a perfect scenario. Like we make mistakes, and you can make mistakes just as easy in the rooms as you can outside of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But if you're armed with the facts, like my sponsor told me this stuff every day so that I could get it in my head, because I did some damage to my brain. Like seriously, when we're doing drugs and drinking, we're like, we don't comprehend very well. Okay. It takes time for the brain to, rejuvenate and get back. So I got a really strong sponsor, and she helped me a lot with that.
The 13th step is literally when guys try to sleep with women. Someone who's farther along the step works tries to recruit a newcomer into a relationship, which is very much what an addict would do. It seems that being in a room with only women would pretty significantly put the kibosh on that kind of thing. Do you believe that co-ed rooms are effective?
I do. I think we have to walk through it all. I think that maybe in the beginning, women's meetings are probably very, very important. But eventually, we have to, because I hear a lot of things from men that I need to hear. And, too now, I mean, in the beginning, and I was targeted a lot in the rooms, and I had to learn how to say no. I had to learn how to draw boundaries. I had to learn how to, and I learned slowly. So I did stick with the women in the beginning, and now I listen very closely to some of the men who I respect. There's a lot of good men in Alcoholics Anonymous too. But there are some dirtballs.
Watching people come and go from the rooms, watching people's sponsors come and go from the rooms, it was heartbreaking. Someone who has time in. I also think, and maybe you can speak to this, when you're in the rooms or you hear someone talking about 12 steps and they're going to start sponsoring someone, and you say, "Oh, how long have you been sober?" And they go 6 months, and you're like, "Oh God, no!" I remember in London, I had a guy coming around talking that he does coaching with men who are sex addicts, and I had him on the show, and I said, "How long have you been sober from in your sexual addiction process?" And he said 6 months, and I ended the show because there's no way this guy is ready to sponsor or coach anybody. My minimum before I would ever hire someone who wanted to work with our teenagers was someone who had been in the rooms for a year and a half minimum. Do you have a longer time frame? How long, if I'm a mom and I'm looking for a sponsor for my daughter's looking for a sponsor, what am I looking for? How long should they be sober in your mind?
My sponsor has a lot of time. More importantly, she's very serious about the 12 steps and Alcoholics Anonymous, and she gives of her time. And so I don't think that you're really that well in the first year. Okay. I really don't. I mean, that's just what I've seen. And it wasn't until I was 5 years sober that I started grieving my divorce and my dad's death and all these things. So I had a lot going on, but I started sponsoring women at about a year. I started sponsoring women, and I did exactly what my sponsor did with me. So I just picked somebody who's really solid in the program, and I just tried to follow her directions. I didn't want to use again, so I did everything she told me to do.
A mom who's wondering if this is right for her daughter or her son or anybody in their family, what's her first step?
Take your daughter to a meeting for sure. It's just go, no matter what. And it doesn't really matter what you think about it. It doesn't, like you said, it's the most successful program. I mean, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is in the Library of Congress. Okay. It's helped heal more people in the 20th century. Yeah. Than any other organization. I mean, it's a deadly disease. Okay. I mean, my twin sister, my brother, my biological mom, gone from this at early ages. And so it doesn't matter what you think of it. You can find 1,000 reasons why AA is flawed. So it doesn't matter what you think about it. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It matters the action you take, that you actually suit up and show up and go and do it until you start to see that it really is a good program. And finding the right meetings too, I think is really important. And you might have to go to a few before you find the right one that's for you, because there's some meetings out there that I wouldn't attend. Honestly, I think there's meetings that, some meetings, the meeting I go to here in Whitefish, Montana is 55 years old. It's been going for 55 years. So it's got a really solid spiritual foundation. And there's people in there that I know that have 45 years of sobriety. And, I just pick people who keep going to meetings, and they're sober, and they have good lives, and they're happy, and you can see the light in their eyes, and they speak the truth. And
it's amazing because it was the Weekend Warriors that's the one that got me. It was the one with the people who said, idle time. I better go to a meeting. Their insights on boredom, their insights on discomfort and nothing to do and no one to do it with, and coming to these rooms and drinking coffee and eating stale cookies. Those were my favorite. And like you, I had tried there were meetings I walked out of because I had a guy in an alcoholics meeting say to me, well, maybe you're not an actual addict, because I didn't believe in the God that he believed in. And I was like, what? So like you said, like there's, and I think this is brilliant, Leslie, because you said there are 1,000 reasons not to go to a meeting. And really, there's only one reason to keep going back. That's the part that's kept me sober, is finding that one reason. That's this work. And we're talking to someone here. You've started meetings. You've done. Talk about the work in Mexico. Talk about the work in Puerto Vallarta. Talk about what you've done with your work, your 12th step.
Well, we started a meeting in Puerto Vallarta 19 years ago. A convention, and there was 25 people that came to the first convention. It was in Puerto Vallarta, and today that convention's still going on. It's called Sobriety Under the Sun. You can buy tickets online. They're sold out very quickly, though. It's every year in January, and today there's upwards the high 700, like 700 plus people that go, and they fly in from all over the world. And so that's one thing that I was involved in. And then I started a meeting in Punta Mita, Mexico, about 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And I go to meetings in Sayulita. I lived in Punta Mita for 12 years, and I've lived in Puerto Vallarta since 1978, on and off. I went down there with my family on a boat, which has probably saved my life. My twin sister didn't come with us. She stayed in San Diego doing drugs with her boyfriend. And so just living out on that boat, I mean, I can just see God working in my life the whole way through. He's kind of, he saved me from myself so many times. And living on that boat was such an awesome experience for me. And I think as a result, my dad didn't drink as much. And so we just, I had a really great life. And Mexico was a big part of it. And I learned to speak, Spanish because I've been there for a really long time. And so, yeah, my heart is, and I go to meetings in Sayulita, which is amazing meetings there. I mean, people from all over the world go to Sayulita because it's a really great, it's like a surf mecca. It's a place where all this, they say, throw a rock and you'll hit a yoga teacher. And there, so there's lots of yoga teachers and lots of surfers. So it's a really cool little town.
And this conference you put together, it's for women?
No, it's mixed, men and women.
Oh, okay. So it is. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
And my meeting that I started, well, it's not my meeting now. I passed the baton on, is mixed as well. But I only sponsor women. I don't sponsor men. So right now, I think I'm sponsoring 12 women.
If there is someone listening to this call and they are feeling pulled to contact you to talk to you about sponsorship, how could they get in touch with you?
Sure. I'll give them my phone number, give them my email address, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
The night I left my first meeting, I got pulled over by the cops. I was in a Ford F-250. And I remember as I pulled over to the side of the road, and I know the routine, turned off the car, turned on the dome light, keys on the dashboard, hands on the steering wheel. He walked up to the car and he looked in and he said, "Your tail light is out." And most likely that was very true because I did not pay for my car. I paid for drugs. And he said, "Have you been drinking tonight?" And just in amazement, I look at this cop. This was in Longmont, Colorado, right as I had taken a left off of Main Street onto 66 towards Lyons. And I remember just looking at this guy and saying, "I don't have any drugs in my car for the first time probably in 7 years. I just went to my first meeting." And he looked at me and he shines his flashlight around the cab of my truck. And next to me in the passenger seat, I have a stack of every single one of the 12-step books because that's what I did at the end of my first meeting. I bought every book they had, and they were still all in the clear cellophane wrappers. And he says, "What did you use?" And I said, "Cannabis, LSD, and alcohol." And he said, "When was the last time you used LSD?" And I said, "A month ago." And he said, "Keep going back. It works if you work it, and you are worth it." Now, for those who don't know, those who aren't friends of Bill W., that's what we say at the end of every meeting. This cop was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Tell me that's not God. I can't tell you it's a coincidence because there was a 24-hour time period up until the moment I got sober and went to my first meeting that has too many of those things to be a coincidence. I can't chalk up the last day of my drug use to coincidence. I can't say that rock bottom and climbing out of that hole was a coincidence. And I can't say it was discipline. I can say it was overwhelming want. And I can say that the results of overwhelming want came from me hitting my knees and reading out loud Marianne Williamson's prayer for the addict, where I said, "I'm not gonna stop. You have to make me stop. I don't have the strength to quit. You have to make me quit. Oh God, please help me. I'm gonna die from this. And I don't seem to care, but I know you care. Show me that you care." That was what I said on my knees the night before a miracle happened. So I don't know what Leslie means by God. I don't know what anybody in those rooms mean by God. And I don't expect you, listener, to know what I mean when I say God, because it means a lot to me. And not just now, because I was a minister at the worst years of my addiction. But I understand moments of grace. and divine moments and direct communion, intimate communion with divinity because of the last days of my drug use. And every day I want to use. Every day I have to take my medicine. So if I don't have a disease, I don't know what I have. I don't tell people that I'm an addict. I tell people that I'm a recovering addict. I tell people that I'm an addict and my problem is Aaron. Because Aaron is my problem. Addiction is my result of the problem that resides within Aaron. These are all things we learn in the rooms. How to take total ownership of what's going on. Not the darkness of our past, but the work that I have to do just for today. I can't think about the work I got to do tomorrow. You keep asking your teenagers, parents, I know you do this. You keep asking your teenagers, well, what are you going to do if, and what do you think is going to happen when? And that's not how an addict thinks. An addict is only thinking about right now. And all you're going to hear to answer those questions of what do you think, what are you going to do when, you're only going to hear our intentions, because addicts are people with great intentions, but really shitty actions. So moms, dads listening to this episode, stop making excuses about the 12 steps. Go to a meeting and see for yourself. Go look at the real people who are in those rooms with real stories. People with lots of money, people with no money and homeless. People who run businesses and people who have been unemployed for years. People who have killed family members and people who have almost died themselves. It's real. Stop making excuses and go to a meeting. Stop finding the 1,000 reasons not to go and find the one to go. Protect your kids and vet the meeting if you're going to send your kids. Wait outside if you have to. But go to a meeting. If nothing else, just to see what recovery really looks like. Massive thanks to Leslie Levy. If you need to get in touch with Leslie, come to me, Aaron at firemountainprograms.com. I will get you connected to her. She only works with women in sponsorship. So moms, teachers, clinicians, if you want help for yourself or your daughters or girls that you're working with, contact me. I'll get you in touch with Leslie. Big thanks to Deep In Productions for how they make this podcast sound so amazing. Parents, take care of yourselves first, your adult relationship second, and your children third. That's how we do our best work with our children. Let me say this a different way. Don't try to get your kid into a meeting. Go to a meeting yourself. Go see for yourself. I'll see you next week on Beyond Risk and Back.